any church body that is seeking diversity without the diversity of its decision makers, the diversity of its theologies, and the diversity of its praxes is not diversity at all. It's actually just spraying perfume upon tokenism. What's up, y'all? My name is Trevor Wint, and I am an artist based out of Raleigh, North Carolina. And my artistic mission statement is that I make art to challenge perspectives and give hope to the marginalized and oppressed. And I started this thing a while ago on my Instagram channel that was called Durag Thoughts. And Durag Thoughts kind of came from this space where it's kind of difficult for me to give my thoughts and critiques and opinions on all sorts of different topics when I am trying to make new projects. You know, it takes a while to build out a project and to get that into a space where people can consume it and kind of deal with some of those issues. And so I wanted to create Durag Thoughts so I could talk about more topics, kind of get more conversations going among the community of you all who consume my art and consume my work. And so I wanted to just dive in this and make some longer form versions of Durag Thoughts. Durag Thoughts kind of just existed in my stories, and that's kind of a short form version to be able to kind of dive into some stuff. So these videos are just going to be a couple minutes of me talking about different topics. And you saw the topic off the top of today. I want to talk about diversity. So in any church body, one of the things that we have to be aware of in America as the American church is, in my opinion, the American church has never really reckoned with the fact that racism and slavery and all these things were innate parts of white Christians who began this Christian movement in America. Now, granted, slaves, my ancestors kind of came into the Christian walk in a little bit of a different way and saw God in a completely different way. But I don't think there's ever really been a reckoning among white church spaces in the understanding of the harm that racism and the deep-seated nature of racism within our churches. And so you see a lot of times churches trying to be intentional about diversity or grow the diversity of their staffs or people or whatever else. You know, I think it was Malcolm X was the one who actually said it, that 12 o'clock on a Sunday is the most segregated hour of the week. And so the church hour is this segregated hour, and we have to be intentional about trying to make our churches look more like what heaven's gonna look like, you know? But at the same time, you can't go into this without including what else heaven's gonna look like, which is going to include people's cultures, people's ideas, people's thoughts, all those different things. It's not gonna be just, oh, we're a mess of people together, but like, there has to be, a melding of the beauty of the different ways that God made us. And so you'll see a lot of times in church cultures, it's like, okay, we're a white evangelical space and we want more minorities in our church. So we're gonna try to seek out minorities, but we're not going to, we're gonna seek out people to just come in, and we're going to continue doing everything the way that we have already done it. We're not going to incorporate any of their ideas or things that they think about God or the ways that they've done church and what opinions that they had. We just want you to come into our space the way that it already is, so that we can pat ourselves on the back and say, hey, we're diverse. And that's problematic. So that's kind of the base overview of the topic that I want to kind of dive into. And I want to hit it from a couple different points from that quote that I kind of talked about earlier, is that the diversity in any church body, any church body that is seeking diversity and is not seeking a diversity of their decision makers, is not seeking diversity of their theologies, and is not seeking, diversity of its praxes, then it's simply spraying perfume upon tokenism. And this is what I mean by that. So decision makers in a church, for instance, if a church body wants to seek diversity, but the people who hold the power to make decisions on what happens in a weekend, what happens throughout the week, how we spend money here, and there, like, what our culture is going to look like, if none of the people who make any sort of decisions in those spaces or put influence into those part of decisions, put any influence into how the church is going to operate, if those people, if no minorities are being placed into those spaces, then it's not diversity. Like, that you're not seeking out, a growth of cultures together. You're just seeking out to be a homogenous space that can say that you have, different colors within there. And I think that's problematic. So a church body has to include the diversity of decision makers as well. Second, I want to talk about theology. And so theology, pretty simply, is just how someone thinks about God. And so in different church spaces, you're going to have different ways that different people think about God. If you go to a Methodist church, they're going to think differently than an Episcopalian church or a charismatic church. So there's a lot of different spaces that are going to think differently and operate differently about the ways that they think about God. So growing up in different church environments, growing up among a different culture, you're going to have different opinions on what you think about God and how those things can kind of inform the ways that you do life as a Christian and the way that you do life as a church. And so if you're not interested in diversifying the ways that you think about God, considering those people that you're bringing in, their opinions and thoughts and beliefs about God, and considering that in the framework of your church, it's again not valuing those people. It's just wanting different colors, which is tokenism totally. That you just want a person there to say that you have a person there that is of a different color and you can check off a box rather than valuing them as people. And so the last thing I want to talk about is the diversity of praxes. And so a praxis is just the multiple of praxis, and a praxis is basically how you carry out what you believe. So in a church space, it's okay, we think this about God. This is how we carry that out. We value justice. And so we are involved in protests in the city. We're going to be a part of the conversation of how we go about racial restoration, different things like that. Or we value, caring for the widow and the orphan. And so we are going to have a ministries that are interested in adoption, or we value caring for the least of these, and so we're going to care for the homeless, and so we're going to have a huge outreach ministry to homeless people. So all those different things kind of come in place within how a church thinks about God and how they carry those things out. And so again, if you come from a different cultural background, you're going to have different ways that you think about God and the ways that you operate in those frameworks. And so if a church space is not interested in thinking differently about how they think about God or carry out what they think about God, then again, you're not valuing the people. You're not valuing the people that you're trying to bring in. You're just, again, spraying perfume upon tokenism. And so we have to consider, especially in churches, I think these things can apply to all sorts of spaces as well. But definitely churches, we have to be intentional when we are seeking to grow the diversity of our spaces, that we are not, sacrificing the value of people, because true diversity is going to include the valuing of people and who God made them to be and how we can make each other better. Because here's the thing, y'all, we all have blind spots. Every single one of us have blind spots. For instance, like me as a male, I'm gonna have blind spots rather, in what it looks like to be a woman in the world. And so I need women in my life to talk to me about and do life with, about, what it looks like to be a woman in the church, what it looks like to be a woman in our culture in America, all those different things. And from that, we're gonna make one another better. We're gonna make one another look a lot more like Jesus. So I hope that this was helpful for you, kind of thinking through some of this stuff. If you have any thoughts on this topic, throw it in the comments below. Like this video if you appreciated it. Subscribe to the channel. We're gonna do more things like this. And yeah, share it with somebody that you think would really appreciate this or grow from this. All right, y'all, this has been the first episode of the first season of Durag Thoughts, and I'll talk to y'all soon. Peace.